A lot of football left, obviously, until they actually get to the season in terms of the summer workouts and then summer practices, all that good stuff. But early in spring, it seemed like, at least from what you were saying, the offense maybe a little bit ahead of the defense. The running game, the receivers seemed really impressive. What do you remember or what stood out about the sort of those skill guys? It seems like maybe finally the running game is going to take a huge step. I know we expected that last year and it never really came to fruition.
The running game was mega impressive. I think the key to that is the offensive line.
Yeah.
Last year, JMU had a ton of returners come on the offensive line, and we were expecting them to be, I mean, possibly a top 25 group in the nation. They were
Yeah.
really hyped up preseason, and while they were good, there was some injuries that hit them, especially towards the latter half of the season. But throughout the entirety of the season, aside from Bucknell, their run game was atrocious. So to see the run game starting to develop from the O line and absolutely with the running backs making plays was a sight for sore eyes. Adaye is an incredibly explosive power back. He has one of the best changes of speed and quick first steps I've seen in a JMU uniform in a while. His 0 to 60 is ridiculous. He can really get up and start moving in a second. So it was lovely to see him bouncing through the A gap and then say, "Oh, I need to make this cut and get moving to the outside." He was beating linebackers and getting past the outstretched hands of defensive linemen. He's really compact. He's not the heaviest guy in the world, but he's listed at about 5'7" or 5'8", I believe, and
Hmm.
he is a bowling ball when it comes to like no one can really wrap their arms around him. He was really, really fun to watch. Caught a couple of passes out of the backfield as well, which JMU utilized incredibly well last year with their running back room. I think this year it's going to be much more of a ground and pound style because then you move to the backup, and George Pettaway, the transfer from USC or UNC, excuse me, was phenomenal. He had one of the only offensive touchdowns in the first half, I believe the only. There may have been some field goals and things of that nature, but he ripped off a 35 plus yard run, has incredible, again, change of pace, is really like disgustingly deceitful. He can really make a guy miss. And watching him work inside of the tackles was really fun to watch. He's going to be a stud. I think his ability to also stretch out into the pass game, catch a ball in the flat, and make a play in open space is going to be utilized greatly under Bob Chesney. And now there's a couple of other running backs that have hit the portal, and I think that's because they saw who the clear one and two were in the spring game.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, that's interesting. And a day you mentioned his size. I also did not realize he was 5'7". I knew he
Yeah,
was
he's
like
short.
kind of built, but that is very, very bowling ball, right? One of the guys who at the portal, Solomon Van Horst, they had listed at 5'8", and I think of him as like a very small running back. So Van Horst hit the portal, I think surprised me a little bit. Um, who
Played
else that
really well in the spring game too. He had 30 plus yards of carrying in the first half,
yeah,
busted off a couple of nice ones. Sammy Malinagi is also
yeah.
in the transfer portal, receiving work in the punt return and kick return game, I believe, as well. So those are two assets that definitely are going to be missed in the depth chart. But if they stay healthy, I don't think Petaway and Adaye will have any issue carrying their load.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, Van Horst is one that I feel like I've hyped up for like 5 off seasons now, because he's got incredible ability when he's healthy to return kicks and do things as a receiver. He had 30 plus catches one season. So that one's definitely an interesting loss. But yeah, like you mentioned, if you have those two sort of feature backs that seem like they can be your guys, that makes a lot of sense. You've also got Wayne Knight in there and some other guys with some talent. So probably no concerns about running back. Seems like maybe that's a solid spot this year. Handing off to the running backs, Dylan Morris started out of the gate, Washington transfer. Kind of seems like he's QB1. Is there anything in the spring game that told you otherwise, or is it sort of Morris is the man to beat going into fall camp?
Until proven otherwise, Dylan Morris will be the starter day one in Charlotte. He looked really good. He made a couple of, again, bit of short dink and dunk type of passes, but was putting the ball in good places for receivers to make a play and keep running after the catch. His pocket awareness was really good. I believe he only got sacked once, maybe twice the whole day. And he very much understood kind of where his receivers were going to be good in space. This isn't the biggest wide receiver room in the world, and I think Morris understands that. So he puts a lot of balls like right on the numbers, so you can catch it and run with it. He looked incredible in the passing game, missed a couple of easy ones, but it's spring ball. He has barely started the past couple of years behind Michael Penix Jr. Makes a ton of sense that he's going to have a little bit of rust. I think you give him a full summer in this offense. Dean Kennedy is a wizard, so you will be fine there getting guys open and scheming people into space. I think he's going to be the quarterback one come the fall.
You wrote an article for JMU Sports News. You're talking that he was finding Cam Ross, the UConn transfer, as kind of that wide receiver one. What do you see from Ross and then maybe some of the other receivers? I know, was it Williams? I think Dylan Williams had a really impressive catch for a touchdown. Seems like he has a ton of talent as a true freshman. There's a lot of names at receiver who I feel like could earn legitimate snaps, which is exciting, coming off of a year right when Sproles, Reggie Brown, and Elijah Strat are all no longer with the program, but maybe the Dukes are still pretty good at receiver.
Yeah, the receiver room seems to have a ton of unproven depth.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hunger in that room for snaps and a lot of guys that are getting better pretty much constantly. When you take a look at the freshman, Dylan Williams, who probably had the most standout day at receiver, he caught a very nice one-handed ball from Alonzo Barnett, about a 4-yard fade route, and just went up and over the top and mossed this kid. I don't know the cornerback that was guarding him. He made him look silly. Did the same exact thing in a compete period where he just went up and took it off the bucket of a kid's head. He's incredibly impressive as a jump ball receiver and apparently has been making consistently crazy catches throughout spring ball practice. Was talking to a couple of unnamed sources who referenced some pretty crazy catches he has made throughout the spring. So he's definitely climbing up Morris's favorite target list because if you throw it anywhere in his vicinity, he's going to catch it. He has huge hands. He has a phenomenal frame. I stood next to him in the post game interview, which Chesney let him talk in, by the way. Let's not
Yeah.
let that go unmistaken. That takes a lot of trust for an early enrollee freshman to say, yeah, you're good to go and speak with them. Because that's maturity, that's communication, and that's also the ability to know your stuff within this offense. He seems like an absolute sponge, is working super hard every day. I mean, all a 6'1", 195. He is in due time. I don't know if it'll be this season or next, will be one of JMU's feature offensive pieces. He's legit.
Yeah, that's a
But
great
yeah,
point of,
to
sorry,
go
go
along
ahead.
with that, Cam Ross as well, the wide receiver one for the day, I think pretty
Yeah.
clearly. He had a bunch of really nice, again, middle of the field catches, can really secure anything that gets put with him, has a super nice route tree, can just break guys off at the top of the route, and feels very Surratt-esque, where it's like, ooh, put
Yeah.
him on a slant. He's 7 yards, guaranteed. But he's also a really good deep ball threat, which is nice. He's a little bit shorter. I think he's about 5'10", but still makes pretty solid plays well above his height. And I think Taji Hudson is the wide receiver two right now. A couple of other names to monitor. Max Moss has been looking
Mhm.
really good in practice as well. He was a freshman that caught a touchdown in JMU's first game up against Bucknell and got spot minutes here and there throughout the fall last year. And I also think Jaden Mines has gotten a lot of spring ball hype. I think this is like the second or third year he's gotten some spring ball hype, so take it with a grain of salt. But he
Yeah.
sounds like he's been having good practices as well.
He's been cooking the last few springs. I feel like Jaden Mines is getting closer to getting some game day reps. And then of course,
Booga.
Jack Skyo, Marion Dollison. Can't
Yeah,
forget about
OD.
him. So
That's the
a lot of
speedster out of the
options.
backfield.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun and see what Dean Kennedy does because again, Jack mentioned it. You can't use that speed and just let it sit on the bench.
Right.
He's going to find some jet sweep, some ender out, something or another. I mean, they were running trick plays all day. There's a couple flea flickers. Taji Hudson threw a 35-yard pass to Taylor Thompson. They had two wide receiver passes in the spring game. Completed like completed some pretty nice balls too. I think I forget who the second one was. Desmond Green, I think, threw the other ball, which was just real fun to see. But yeah, I remember watching some Holy Cross film and going, "Oh, they're a little crazy." Nice.
Yeah, it also seems like Chesney has a good feel, like you mentioned at the beginning, of like, hey, fans are coming to watch the game, so like let's make it entertaining. Where you mentioned Signetti, maybe some other eras are kind of the spring game is all about, developing talent or whatever, and there's maybe not as much of the entertaining aspect. Chesney seems like he kind of gets the whole engage with the community deal, which seems like it could be a ton of fun for fans, especially if they keep winning the way they have.
Yeah, I saw Signetti took a knee in the spring game. That was awfully
I
fun at
did
Indiana.
I did see that. Yeah, he was taking it seriously there, the need to run out the
Hey,
clock. Yeah, that was
they
awesome.
need to practice a victory formation. They've never done it before, so
That's
I get it.
I saw a lot of those comments too.
But yeah, it was really fun to see just Chesney interacting with the fans. They really are looking like they're going to try and make a day out of this because there was
Hmm.
baseball right afterwards. They ended up winning and sweeping against Georgia Southern later that evening. I got to go to that game as well. JMU baseball on a heater after losing to Maryland yesterday, though.
Yeah.
That's sad. But regardless, they really tried to emphasize that, hey, this is going to be an entertaining fan-filled day. They had a nice tailgating crowd in the morning, put up some pictures on our social media about that. It was some pretty solid crowds. Throughout the game, they had a couple of quote unquote compete periods that
Hmm.
were really fun to watch. There was the big man catch drill where Emmanuel
Yeah.
Bush took one to the house, catches a punt from Ryan Hansen, and is rumbling and bumbling down the down the middle of the field. Does a nice little flip into the end zone. That was quite fun. And Jesse Ramil caught a bottle as well. They had some 1v1s in terms of DB and receiver, mentioned that
Hmm.
earlier with Dylan Williams, and then offensive line, defensive line. And those were pretty insightful to see some of the D linemen that are cooking. So
Yeah.
yeah, throughout the day they were really interactive. Harry O'Kelly got on the mic later
Yeah.
in the fourth quarter. Bob Chesney said, "Hey, we're running QB power here," and JC Evans runs QB power at like the 7 yard line. Still got like 4 yards after he announced it to the defense, which was quite cool to see. But yeah, they were very much having a good time talking on the mic. Chesney's right behind the offense, screaming, waving, motioning guys through. So they really did have a good time. It was fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's different for sure. I'm excited to see how it translates.